Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. We're gonna talk about YouTube getting blasted by Roku. Apparently, YouTube and Google are up to some dirty tricks with Roku. All this over YouTube TV. It's all over the place this morning, man. Roku users may lose YouTube TV access due to Google's predatory behavior, according to Roku. Lots of people on Twitter taking YouTube and Google to task. For sure. IGN even says Roku is warning customers that YouTube TV may be booted from the streaming aggregator due to Google's unfair terms that could harm our users. The New York Post is like, Roku accuses Google of making anti-competitive demands over YouTube TV. The streaming wars are heating up for sure. And I think we're going to see a lot of people making these sorts of deals. I know that in regards to the streaming apps, for the longest time, I think YouTube wasn't allowed on the Amazon Fire Stick. I know that Vudu was not allowed on the Amazon Fire Stick because Walmart owned it, and then as soon as Fandango bought it, they were allowed to actually bring it over. It's crazy. We've got too many streaming services, and too many of these companies have other interests. They have their own platform, they have their own streaming devices or whatever. And in this case, YouTube seems to be making a play to push its way into TV, which makes sense with what they're doing, right? They're paying celebrities to come over to YouTube. They seem to be favoring traditional mainstream media content at YouTube. And it seems like YouTube is trying to push itself in the direction of being sort of a Netflix at this point. There's been talk that YouTube really isn't that profitable, that despite the billions and billions of video views they serve every month, that poor YouTube isn't doing very well. I find that very, very hard to believe, but I don't know. We're going to talk about the situation with Roku. We do watch the streaming wars, and Roku is a huge player. I think it's the biggest player in streaming right now as far as devices go. And you might not be able to watch your TV through YouTube anymore. You'll have to subscribe to Hulu and give Disney your money instead of giving it to Google. Anyway, before we get into it, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We're over 186,000 subs here on YouTube. Thank you for the support. Having a little trouble getting found these days, and I think it's because we have so many mainstream media outlets that are sort of helping push down indie channels like ours. Just an opinion based on some stuff going down over at YouTube, but Roku is not happy with YouTube. We're gonna talk about this. I'm gonna go out to Ars Technica, I think, and we'll talk about it. They said Roku warns customers Google may remove access to your YouTube TV. Roku says Google wants changes to Roku search. Google calls the claims baseless. YouTube TV is supposed to bring the best parts of cable TV to streaming, but it's also bringing one of the most annoying parts, carriage disputes. Roku and Google are apparently fighting over the terms of carrying YouTube TV on Roku's streaming platform. Roku has sent out an email blast to customers with the subject line saying Google may remove your access to YouTube TV. If you can't already tell, we're getting a very one-sided take on the story right now. Google has yet to offer a response to Roku's first salvo, though we've asked for comment, and we'll update this article. If Google responds, update, they have responded. Okay. Roku's email says, recent negotiations with Google to carry YouTube TV have broken down because Roku cannot accept Google's unfair terms, as we believe they could harm our users. Roku's email only vaguely alludes to what it is claiming Google wants, saying we cannot accept Google's unfair and anti-competitive requirements to manipulate your search results, impact the usage of your data, and ultimately cost you more. Axios claims to be able to fill in the blanks and has published a wild list of demands that Roku says Google has asked for. Google's alleged demands range from changing how Roku's streaming platform works to stipulating what chips Roku should use in its products. Roku tells Axios that Google wants a dedicated search result row for YouTube within the Roku Smart TV interface, and it wants Roku to block search results from other streaming content providers while users are using the YouTube app on Roku's system. That is some heavy-handed monopolistic bullshit. Roku is actually one of the most open streaming sticks out there. You can sideload a Roku with just about anything, and they've always been this way. So for Google to come in and be like, if you want YouTube TV, bitches, you're going to make it Chromecast, effectively, right? The report continues. Roku alleges Google has asked it to favor YouTube music results from voice commands made on the Roku remote while the YouTube app is open, even if the user's music preference is set to default to another app like Pandora. Okay, this is exactly what Amazon does with the Amazon Fire Stick, which is fine because Amazon owns it. They can do whatever the hell they want. Google has no right to tell Roku that they have to favor them. This is the thing, man. Google is setting themselves up for a huge fall. They really do not play fair. They don't. Whether it's in YouTube or with search results on websites or whatever, it is a Google world. I keep telling people it's a Google world, and they don't realize how much of a Google world it is. I mean, websites and channels, all of this stuff lives and dies based on Google recommendations, based on the Google algorithm, whether it's YouTube or search or whatever. And they're trying to strong arm Roku. And the thing is, there are other streaming TV platforms out there. They don't need YouTube's. They really don't. The most bizarre claim from Axios is that Google is trying to use app carrying negotiations to change the way Roku's products are built. Roku says Google has threatened to require Roku to use certain chipsets or memory cards that would force Roku to increase the price of its hardware product, which competes directly with Chromecast. Wow. Jack up your prices so Chromecast looks better by comparison, and we're just going to push people over to oh my God, this is ridiculous. Roku really goes for it in the last paragraph of its email, saying it's deeply disappointed in Google's decision to use their monopoly power to try and force terms that will directly harm streamers. The M word is a sensitive subject, as Google's search unit is currently dealing with an antitrust investigation from the DOJ. But that's not really relevant. You could argue that regular YouTube has monopoly on web video, but other than sharing a brand, standard YouTube has basically nothing to do with YouTube TV, which competes with cable TV and has a second streaming competitor in Hulu plus live TV. I think they're going to push to integrate it more. I think this is part of why we're seeing them trying to lure celebrities to the platform. Now, they did try before to do their own shows. They had YouTube Red, and they kind of gave up on it. And, we know Karate Kid wound up on Netflix or whatever. But I think that this is what their long-term plan is going to be. I think they're looking at it again, and they're like, yeah, we need to be TV. We need to be a TV network producing content like Netflix, in addition to having people come over to our platform. YouTube TV isn't the normal YouTube app for televisions. This is Google's cable TV replacement for cord cutters. Why cut the cord when it costs just as much? I'm looking at this. I'm looking at what we're spending on streamers, and it's more than we spent with DirecTV. Just like with cable, YouTube TV lets you pay a big monthly fee, $65 and up, for a bundle of 85 plus live TV channels, and ESPN, CNN, MTV, Cartoon Network, blah 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 blah. All these channels will probably get gone eventually anyway, and get gobbled up by streaming services. This isn't Roku's first app carriage dispute. In the past, being removed from Roku has only meant being pulled from the channel store. Users who already had the channels installed could continue watching. There are places you can actually sideload Roku apps from, and some of them are pretty spicy, I guess. So if you're a YouTube TV user on Roku and are worried about this, just make sure the channel is installed, and hopefully you'll be able to ride out the mudslinging. We'll probably see something happen soon. Axios writes, the carriage agreement between the two companies is set to expire imminently. Here's what Google said. They responded to Roku's claims, calling them baseless and denying it. Denying it once changes. The company sent over the following statement. It's coming from Google. We have been working with Roku in good faith to reach an agreement that benefits our viewers and their customers. Unfortunately, Roku often engages in these types of tactics in their negotiations. We're disappointed that they chose to make baseless claims while we continue our ongoing negotiations. All of our work with them has been focused on ensuring a high quality and consistent experience for our viewers. We have made no requests to access user data or interfere with search results. We hope we can resolve this for the sake of our mutual users. Updated again, a report from Protocol adds a new wrinkle to the story. Google is apparently pushing the AV1 codec during negotiations with which Roku framed as Google requiring certain chipsets. AV1 is a new, more efficient, royalty-free video codec backed by Google, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Microsoft, Samsung, Intel, Facebook, ARM, Hulu, and a ton of other heavy hitters. AV1 seems poised to become the next big video standard, and Google is working on re-encoding the entire YouTube library over to AV1. Getting a wider rollout will require support from hardware vendors. Okay, so that might actually have something to do with it. It's not about the chip necessarily. It's about the format. So kind of like how, Flash went to the wayside. Protocol says Google is requiring Android TV OEMs to support AV1, that Google is also pushing competing smart TV and streaming devices to use it, including Roku. Most everyone would benefit from the adoption of AV1. Content providers like Google and Netflix would have lower bandwidth costs, and consumers would have lower bandwidth requirements and less chance of hitting a data cap. All right, so this is apparently just a sticky situation. It is kind of scary, though. I mean, Google can tell the hardware manufacturers what's what, like if you want to carry our stuff, but they're within their right to do that. But I also have to wonder, if part of it isn't, they sell Chromecast devices. They want people buying Chromecast devices. I don't think they've been terribly successful with Chromecast, and Roku, as far as I'm aware, is still the top streaming platform. We've got both in our house. We actually have a TV with built-in Roku. I think we've got a standalone Roku device, and then we have a couple of Fire TV sticks too. And it does seem like Roku has sort of become the default video player. So I don't know, guys. It's just another example of Google being Google, for sure. I'm gonna wrap this one up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, and we'll talk later.